The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. It's great to be back again. Today, we have special guest Justin Sung from Auth-Signal back on the show. How are you, Justin?
I'm great, thanks. Happy to be back. It's been a few months between our last conversation, so yeah, no, it's been good.
Cool. Well, always good to have you on the show. Lots to delve into today. Before we start, of course, a big thank you to our show partners who make the New Zealand Tech Podcast possible. So thank you to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark HP, and Gorilla Technology. Well, let's jump in first of all to we'll talk into the New Zealand tech news, some of the broader international things that obviously have a play on New Zealand. And we also want to delve in as part of this around solving NZ's banking scam issues, because it just seems to have gone absolutely nuts. And of course, there's a lot more sort of to the broader cybersecurity landscape in New Zealand, but that's one piece. And I'm sure we'll end up talking about a few areas, but that's one area I'm really keen to get your thoughts on. We'll go into some international stuff and then delve a bit more into Auth-Signal and the things that you're doing to help protect Kiwis. But maybe before we start, you can give a quick intro in terms of where you and Auth-Signal sort of fit into this big wide world of tech and so on in New Zealand.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul. I'm Justin, the founder of Auth-Signal, and I've spent about a good decade building consumer fintech apps. So we're seeing all the newspaper headlines now, but I've been seeing this kind of worst case scenario build up for the last couple of years. So Auth-Signal is a cybersecurity and fraud solution where banks, insurance companies, airlines, any digital tool can put into their systems to protect our accounts. So we're seeing some great uptake in New Zealand and abroad on our technology. And yeah, look, it's topical, it's relevant, and we need to start taking account security very seriously. And everyone, I think, has now understood this.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, first up on the news front, 2 Degrees. They're going to be closing down. They've made their formal announcement of their 3G mobile service. And of course, when you're running 2G network, 3G network, 4G network, 5G network, what you've got is the spectrum is being split up to provide these range of services. And so that means there's not as much spectrum available to go into 4G or 5G, and so that limits the sort of performance and coverage that you get on those new networks. So it's something that we know these things are coming. This is really part of the mix for all the mobile networks. So yeah, I think it's important that telcos sort of give that warning. And so there, with 2 Degrees, they're talking about shutdown of that 3G service over the next couple of years. And yeah, it's important that we get the most now out of our more modern networks. Obviously, we still have some 2G running in New Zealand as well. That can be quite important for. Probably there's not so many phones that need a 2G connection, but you've got varying things, sort of power meters in people's homes and and the like that may use 2G to communicate.
Yeah, I think pager services only went off properly just a few years ago, right? That was one of my learnings when I actually thought I miss those pages, the funky colors that you can get. But anyway, we're sunsetting 3G. It means we're getting old, Paul.
Well, especially for those that remember when 3G was new and exciting, right? So we've heard now Spark New Zealand, they have said they're closing off their mobile network. That's about give or take a couple of years away, and it's in 2025. And One NZ are set to shut down their 3G August next year. So yeah, it's all sort of starting to pick up pace, and we'll be, in most regards, we're going to be better for it. And this is sort of the nature when you've got innovative new offerings, and you've got things tied up with the old. You need to double down and focus on what's new and current, but it obviously can cause a little bit of pain, and so these things do need to be planned out well.
There's a heads up. So I think plan now, ditch your 3G phones if you're still using them.
Yep, those family members that are still on a old whatever it is, that's non-smartphone, that's only does 2G and 3G, then its days are numbered.
It must be coming up to 2 decades of a technology. I mean, you blink and it's 20 years.
yeah. Well, it's sort of been give or take roughly a decade, sort of 3G to 4G, then 4G, 5G, and roughly a decade. They've estimated for 5G to 6G. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Also on the local front, some really important health tech. Diabetics in New Zealand may soon have access to government funded continuous glucose monitors. So this is tech that you can attach to your body, and for those who are diabetics, and they need to be doing that sort of ongoing blood testing, then this looks like some pretty exciting technology. As with a lot of technology, it goes through a period of where it's very expensive. Over time, sort of comes down and gets a bit more accessible. But yeah, my understanding is it's still pretty expensive at the moment. I think One News were reporting and saying, look, you can buy these devices yourself, but $200 a month, so
Wow.
not very cheap. So so Pharmac are asking suppliers for quotes in this area, as they look at whether that's something that they can fund going forward. So yeah, good to see tech taking an increasing role within the world of health for New Zealanders. It is complex though, isn't it? Because there's a cost to technology, and there are also risks when it comes to technology, and that's I guess part of what we've been hearing around with move to a national data platform for health information. Really exciting on one front, but what happens when whether it's especially a government entity, but there are obviously, when you have these big pools of data, there are risks not only from the organization who maybe sits at the center, but organizations that plug into that.
Yeah, and I think culturally we haven't been exposed to the same level of risks and threats. If you go to America, every person on the street knows how important and your healthcare data is, and they demand the kind of security out of their healthcare provider. And they quote the acronym that usually comes with that, which is HIPAA, the kind of standards that oversee that, right? And I think it's time for New Zealand to step up and let's really get real about data, digital, and privacy and security.
Yep, no, you're spot on. We definitely need to mature, and we're seeing in Australia there's a lot more sort of teeth coming, being shown there. And expectations have been really raised. So yeah, look, I think this will be an interesting one to watch. Te Whara Ora are, I think have to get contracts negotiated and so on. So there's not a whole lot of information shared just yet on how this is going to play out, but it's definitely coming. And so, we'll definitely be watching with interest. But I think there are a lot of challenges at the moment in terms of that central access to information, how it moves around, the level of security or lack thereof within private healthcare organisation or providers. So yeah, and we've certainly seen some issues, there historically in New Zealand, and yeah, just seems to be an area that's kind of ripe for innovation. And of course, you've got sort of new players that are coming into the health space that are more tech minded, like Tend, who recently been awarded at the NZ High Tech Awards, and who we've spoken to here on the NZ Tech podcast and also on the NZ Business podcast. So it's exciting to see moves ahead. Let's hope it's done in a really smart and appropriate way that is able to be really innovative and effective, whilst keeping our data under appropriate level of lockdown.
Yeah, no, I think I'm excited. It's a game changer for people who are suffering with diabetes, and I can just recall watching someone measure their blood sugar levels using strips in a device that was very clunky to handle. So look, it's a game changer.
Yeah, so so it's good to see a bunch of things going on there on the health front for New Zealand. Now, if we look at the media, there has been so much talk about people losing money, often to sort of bank-related scams, payment-type scams, and so on. And it just seems to be, really ramping up. I've had a very close experience that I can share a little bit about. A company that called my team at Gorilla in for assistance. They'd had a company bank account drained, and at that stage, this particular one was about, I don't know, off the top of my head, sort of about 2 years or so back. Company bank accounts changed. There was a bunch of things that we could see in terms of how their small business, computers were not being maintained and secured and so on. So there were risks on that front. There were some interesting things going on at the time. I believe around sort of mobile number porting. So there's probably a combination of things that kind of happened here that put them in a position where they were able to be compromised. And in that case, the bank came and they refunded the money back, even though
But it's not always the case, right?
Well, and I think that's kind of the big thing we're seeing now. And I remember discussing this going back a year or two, because at the time this one happened, we were seeing the bank step in and generally front up and say, we'll cover it. Right. And there might have been a non-disclosure agreement or, what have you. It wasn't something that banks were waving the flag saying, hey, come and steal Kiwis' money because we'll just refund it to them. But then discussing with people outside of New Zealand and different economies, and it seems to sort of vary according to where in the world you are. I think New Zealand and Australia are probably reasonably similar in terms of, at that time, in terms of banks coming to the party and funding the losses. Now, what we've seen since is that picture has changed dramatically. And so if you lose funds because someone scammed you, then it's as though the money was in your pocket and you handed that money over to the scammer. The banks are, I guess have kind of reached their limit. They've done a lot from their perspective to probably educate. I think it's debatable how I think how effective some of that education has been. I think we might have talked last week around the TVNZ program on scams and so on. I think that's a really good educational piece. So there's lots of things going on to educate, but there's quite a combination of changes that need to be made in order to make us secure, right? And this is what we were talking about before the show today. And we were in a position where, look, people are susceptible, and yes, you can educate people to a degree, but also even very switched on people, sometimes you hit them at a wrong time, and they'll be very sort of switched off. So you have to have other mechanisms in play, not just that education piece.
Yeah, and it's the digital equivalent of a RAM raid. And for those who are listening outside of New Zealand, we've had a very bad last couple of years where people are just, driving their cars into stores and grabbing whatever they want, right? And education gets you so far, but the bad actors, the cyber criminals, are getting very, very sophisticated, right? And the lines and the psychology that's being used will fool the smartest of us, and we just have to accept that. The flip side of that, like you're just mentioning, there are plenty of tools that a bank can or a financial service provider can put in place, and we're starting to see a little bit of the awareness from customers demanding options to secure their accounts. And I think there's potentially an opportunity, a competitor bank in New Zealand to actually differentiate themselves and go, hey, look, we've got the best account security, we give you the best interest rates, where do you want to put your money? For me personally, I would gravitate to a bank that offered all the different solutions to keeping my money safe from scams and from things like phishing. One of the things is you could get rid of the password. Could be a great step. So look, it's this is a topic I'm very, very passionate about, and I think I'd love to see a little bit more government involvement. We're starting to see some fines that are eye-watering in Australia.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing that much regulation or talk of regulation here in New Zealand. I'd love to see a little bit more from government.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Australia, because it was a $250 million kind of ruling against who was it in Australia? Name's popped out of my head.
Medibank.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Medibank. So there are the hammer is sort of starting to come down on organisations that are not getting their head around solving cyber security and data privacy types of issues, right?
Yeah, and we've recently just had weekend clearing in New Zealand. So, if you bought a car over the weekend, you could get the money into the bank account pretty quickly. It's these sorts of changes in how fast money can move between accounts that actually make it very, very simple for a fraudster to run away with the money. So with these conveniences that you and I get to enjoy, comes that responsibility to protect the funds and the accounts.
Yeah. Look, the sorts of issues that we're seeing are, a fraudster's getting into somebody's account one way or another. Sometimes that is very much through a scenario where they've managed to do something like a SIM swap and actually be getting a verification type text message. But I guess now we're hearing more about those multi-factor things just being a social engineering scenario where they've got somebody on the phone. They trick that person basically into logging into false site and then feeding through multi-factor authentication details. So the idea of going passwordless, the idea of using tokens as part of the mix, and the like. I mean, this is going to bring down these issues a lot, isn't it? If we can get these mechanisms in place.
Yeah, and that's one of the most common ways to scam people through phishing and basically getting your password or your phone number. The other way that's sort of emerging, and I'd love to enlighten the viewers, is something called push payment fraud. So this is even harder to combat and even harder to, I guess, point the finger at who's responsible. So you're starting to get scams where people, you and me, folks, thinking that they are sending money to a legitimate bank account, going into the bank account as if it was just standard kind of run-of-the-mill transaction. So you're logging in as you, but someone's rung up and told you, hey, look, we're doing the Hawke's Bay flood relief fund, and then asking you to put $1,000 into a bank account you've never, it's a new bank account you've never sent any money to. And in these situations, you do it because someone's asking you for money for donation, and out of the goodwill of your heart, you do it. So they're starting to see sort of these creative ways of getting money out of people. There are also solutions to that. One, don't send money to someone you've just only known very recently or was trying to get you to push money through a bank account that you've never sent money to. But look, again, it's at the point of transaction. We need to be able to go catch you and me and our kind of our friends and family at the point of transaction. Are you sure you are doing this? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know who you're sending money to? And we don't have a lot of those controls.
Yeah, we don't have that verification, right? When you set up a new bank account, and let's we've come across these scenarios locally, and we hear about them in Australia a lot too. If somebody's making a deposit, they think they're putting their money in with a very reputable entity, another bank, etc. Maybe that's where they want to deposit their funds and invest them for a period of time. But actually, you don't have the verification that the funds are going where you think they are.
Yeah.
And so they might go into an individual's account, and then that individual is being used as a mule to then pass those funds off overseas. So that's
too easy.
That's a major problem. Do you think it would be easy to solve that particular piece, or are there privacy issues? Because you could have a bank account and then another piece, a name that kind of has to match up, or something that would break a lot of existing things. I suppose that's the issue. You put new systems in place and it would break them, but we're kind of used to having deadlines and having things change and have to do things a different way. We've had that with things like in number porting mobile numbers. How those happen today is different to how it was happening 5 years ago, and that's put in place to make it more secure. Yet with banking, somebody gives you an account number, and you think you're putting funds in there for one party, and actually it's going to somebody completely different.
Yeah, look, it's amazing how simplistic that kind of fraud is. I mean, you've just explained how to defraud someone in a matter of 1 minute, right? So I think from a technology point of view, we do have privacy preserving technologies these days where we could match names without actually revealing the actual, raw name. So, this is what we're really interested in at Off Signal. There's plenty to work on in our space, and look, we're very excited to play a part and exist at this point in time because we're definitely needed.
Yeah. So, talking about that, maybe we can. I think we definitely want to sort of delve into that a little bit more later. And actually, we can walk through my experience with trying out your technology, with a token and within in New Zealand. So we'll definitely come back to that one. But let's have a chat around some of the sort of international things going on. Meta's Threads launched last week. It was a topic I discussed on TVNZ Breakfast. I think it might have been Tuesday or Wednesday morning last week, and then it launched I think sort of Thursday timeframe. Threads being really a quite a head-on compete with Twitter in many ways. It's certainly got sort of a feel that looks like a Twitter clone. Of course, we've had a number of others, but the big thing being that this comes from Meta. It's tied at the hip with Instagram. It uses your existing Instagram login. But it goes a step further than that, in that it pulls across, or it gives you the option to pull across your Instagram connections. So, I've signed up there. I don't have a lot of connections or followers on Instagram, maybe, 800. And actually, I should have a little bit of a look in the app. But the percentage of those people that have come across from Instagram, and let's look at the numbers. Instagram, I think, are around 1.6 billion monthly active users, was sort of in that direction last time I heard, which is around 4 times that Twitter has. So if I look at my Threads app, let's see, out of those roughly 800 followers, how many have come across. Maybe around a fifth, where I've got 172 followers on Threads under my Instagram ID of Paul Spain NZ. So that's a pretty big percentage that in less than a week have signed up for Threads account. Now, this is maybe a reflection of the sort of followers I have that are into the latest and greatest things, sort of, tech-wise and so on. But if they manage to achieve a quarter, they were able to bring across a quarter of Instagram users in total, they would be, potentially more active, depending on what changes happen and how much people sort of focus on say Threads versus Twitter. But we could be in a position in a reasonably short space of time where Threads is actually more active than Twitter. And kind of, if that happens, it would be a pretty interesting scenario. Now, I'm not sure whether that is realistically what's going to happen, and there are some complexities there as well, right? Because we see that that Meta are kind of staying away from. They're trying to stay away from news and politics, which is I guess some of the biggest kind of activity that you tend to see on Twitter. What's your take, Justin?
Well, it didn't take long for it to become controversial. I think
that's true. Yeah. Well, yeah. So there's been coverage. On online, there was a bit of drama over the weekend. With something posted on Threads that then moved over to Twitter, involving Spark's social media channel and 1NZ, 2 Degrees kind of weighed in. There was a whole bunch of stuff there, right? And we don't need to go into the detail of that, but How messy is social media as a place to do business?
Yeah, I
It's
think
complicated.
everyone thought that Twitter was going to be the town hall that everyone would flock to, and we're seeing true human nature come out. Right? We disagree with you, so we're going to go somewhere else to create a new echo chamber.
Yeah.
So look, I think it's a demonstration of how complex humans are. My first take on Threads, there's a lot of mishmash of content that isn't really curated to what I like. You've got some rugby players on there. TJ Perinara is a shout out. He's pretty active on there, and he even liked one of my comments on a thread, so that was cool.
There you go.
But there's a whole bunch of mishmash, and some of my followers, just the meager followers that have followed me. You've got way more followers than me, Paul. I'm jealous. They're not posting anything, so it seems like it's kind of just this platform for loud people to shout, and if you like what they say, you stick around. And for me, I'm still like my curated list of Twitter people I follow, and yeah, we'll see how that pans out for Threads.
Yeah. Look, I think it's reasonably early days, but we're certainly starting to see some differences. But we are in a. I think what happened over the weekend sort of highlights where we're in a different era than where we were just a few years ago with social media, and it was awesome how we were seeing that sort of big organizations able to engage at a really personal level, and it seemed reasonably uncomplicated. But it seems to have got more complicated, I think, in recent years. In the early days of social media, I think it was generally, especially Twitter. It was a really neat place to go to learn, to meet new people. Tweet ups were a thing. Going back probably 12 to 15 years, and you go meet up with people in person you met on social media. Now I think the role of social media and business has really evolved, and it can be pretty complex, as we've seen with some of the scenarios playing out in the US, your Bud Light type things and so on. And it's I think it's just complicated to get your head around how to do that stuff. I'm certainly glad that that's not my job, is having to juggle social media for a large organization, because there's just this political element that comes into it. And when you look at politics, it's like, and this is the challenge politicians have, as they put something out on their channel, doesn't matter what what party they're from, there's going to be a whole lot of people that hate on whatever they post because they've got a different view on the approach, and you just can't possibly please everybody. And now we're starting to see that that take really take hold for for organizations with they're posting something that from their perspective is, hey, this is really good, we're showing we care, and then it's like, oh, well, actually you're not, and so on, right? So the whole cancel culture thing can come in very quickly.
I'm just going to stick to memes. I think it's a safer place for me.
Good call. Let's all close down our social media accounts and just view the memes. Now, also in the media, which really does tie into social as well, as this Online News Act, which Canada have moved ahead on, and there's some similarities here with what's been happening, down under as well. And I think it was, going back a couple of years when also, during the sort of the time of COVID lockdowns, when Australia was threatening things that could have potentially led to Google exiting Australia. That was, I think, the threat from Google in terms of trying to create a playing field where the big tech companies, be it Google on the search front or social media companies, would have to pay something for the content that they're effectively kind of lifting from the web. Usually they're linking back to it, but it becomes sort of something that their algorithms and their platforms take advantage of. And so in Canada, what we've seen is Meta basically saying they're ending access to news on Facebook and Instagram in Canada in response to this new legislation that would require them to be paying news publishers. Now, I do find these sorts of scenarios, so sometimes there's a little bit of playing politics kind of going on. There's a little bit of what can look like standover tactics from these big tech giants, which when you look at them, some of them are worth more than varying countries' economies. Certainly the GDP of a smaller to medium country often falls below the sort of scale of these big businesses. So they do like to sort of push their weight around. And so we understand, Meta have made this announcement, but then, on the flip side, we're hearing from, the government saying, look, they don't need to do that at this point in time. I think here was a quote from the Canadian Heritage Minister, Pablo Rodriguez, and he said Facebook knows very well that they have no obligations under the Act right now, in his tweet. So it's kind of interesting to see how these things actually play out, and it's not always easy to kind of work out who's on the right side of this, or have Canada kind of got it right, or are they actually pushing too hard, expecting too much compared to in other markets, or is it all down to tech giants behaving badly?
Well, that's a huge statement. It's a huge topic to dissect. But I think, it wasn't long ago where newspapers had the power, right? They held they were the mainstream means to communicate through mass communication. And this last 20 years of the web just taking everything over, they've struggled to find new ways to monetize. And I think, here's a suggestion. If you want to compete with Meta, maybe you do need to think about building your own social network, as a news outfit, and create new digital ways to communicate the stories that you want to send out to everyone. So look, it's I personally think that the big tech have a huge market share. They're powerful. And
it's a big mind share, isn't it?
Yeah. And we've allowed them to be this big. They've created software that makes it so easy to scroll and doom scroll. So I don't know whether regulation is going to be the best way forward. I'm always a little bit cautious of regulation, but I think there is a responsibility from social networks to bring all parties to social conversations and to ensure that there's a town hall aspect to their platforms. And shutting news channels out, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. So look, it's balancing act, I think.
Yeah, look, I'm a little bit concerned around how some of these things are playing out from the legislation perspective. I think it's really hard to get that piece right. But on the flip side, our social media companies, their goal is very much to please their shareholders, above all else. That seems to be the focus, and often that means treading on the toes of individuals in many ways, and certainly negative consequences on small business, and that's, I guess, to a degree we fit into that category as a publishing podcasts as a smaller media niche media outlet. And so there's positives and negatives around these platforms, but sometimes I do wonder as if the legislation maybe overstates things or can favor the bigger players, and the smaller players don't necessarily come out with anything. So it's a messy world to operate in, and as we've discussed many times, the legislation where it is needed often comes way too late. Takes a long time to figure out, and the wheels of government tend to move slowly, and at times we'll see things enacted very, very quickly, but in some ways it's like when they act quick, when they act slow, from many perspectives they get the legislation wrong anyway.
And there's a laundry list of issues on social media to tackle as well, so I think there's some clues to why this is being pushed through. There's quite a lot of money involved, but I'd love to see things like exploitation, bullying, online bullying. I think there's plenty of role for regulation to help police these mediums, and those are quite big problems, to be honest, in my view, social problems compared to whether news companies are earning something.
But complex problems. Also on sort of the global news front, we've heard IDC have shared figures on global spending on public cloud services. So we're talking the likes of AWS, Microsoft, Google, and IBM and the like, with their varying cloud services such as infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. Those public cloud services now have shot past $500 billion. So 545.8 billion is the figure that IDC research has, or their research has found. So a pretty impressive increase in revenue for those cloud service providers. To a degree, they need it because they're building out new data centers all over the place, including here in New Zealand. And I guess it's because of those, that continual growth that we're able to, it's made sense for them to invest in the infrastructure here. But just a big number to hit, and it probably won't be too many years along, and we'll be hearing about them hitting $1 trillion, right?
And I think I saw a figure. I can't exactly can't remember the figure, but only a small percentage of workloads have actually moved to the cloud. There's still a majority chunk of in-house data centers. They're operated by a lot of the banks, government, and it's generational to move them off some of our legacy hosting providers and data centers. So I love the cloud. We build on the AWS cloud, and all power to cloud providers.
Now let's talk about what you are building. What's been happening at All Signal since we caught up
Yeah.
last, and I think around that time we may have had a little bit of a chat about Air New Zealand, but today we've gone and had a little dabble with what Air New Zealand are doing. They've incorporated your technology into their sign in and processes. So I've got my key now, my physical token, YubiKey in this case. I've now got that linked up to my Air New Zealand account. So in fact, anybody logging into Air New Zealand from the web will be seeing your technology in action, whether that's coming in for multi-factor authentication and a text type code, or whether they want to go further and set up a hardware key.
Yeah, no, it's we've made a lot of progress, and you've thanks for setting it up on your account. It's my joy and pleasure to help and guide people through setting these things up, especially on a well-loved New Zealand brand. Look, we've been busy. People want security, and I think we're starting to see people understand that you need to demand more out of your service providers to not just give you a great experience, but also to treat your data, your money as sacred, right? So Off-Signal is a platform that helps these companies achieve that level of security. We make it very, very easy. You don't need large teams to be able to put our technology in. And we're very excited about some proliferating technologies that have been launched and announced, and you might have covered them in some different podcasts, but we're talking about things like passkeys.
Fantastic.
So Apple, Google, and Microsoft are looking at the world quite differently, where you could eliminate passwords completely. And it's a bold statement, but the technology is there to do it. And how they do it is using the devices that you and I have. The iPhone or your Android phone all have these secure chips, and sometimes they're called secure enclaves, but effectively they're chips that it will be very difficult to break into, and everything's encrypted. So the combination of these chips that everyone has in their pocket mean that service providers, banks, insurance companies, etc., now can initiate what we call cryptography. And I won't get into too technical details, but effectively using really sophisticated cryptographic techniques to secure your transaction between you and the company. This means that your key, your secret, your token belongs to you, and you never share it with anyone, which is unlike what passwords are. Passwords is something that you share with someone else.
Yep.
And that's where the world is heading. We want to keep our private stuff as close to us as possible and not share it if possible at all, and use techniques like cryptography to then exchange information privately to go, hey, look, this is me. I'm transacting. I'm moving $10,000 across, and we do it all securely through cryptography. So I'm very excited. We're excited for technologies like passkeys. We're stoked that every business that we talk to want to get there. They want to eliminate passwords. And we're having a great run uplifting security in New Zealand and outside of it. And we've had, we're going from strength to strength. So yeah, a lot has happened since we last spoke, and it's great to be able to showcase a well-loved New Zealand brand and have my mom and dad secure and know that my friends and family have the options to secure their account. So give it a go. if you're sitting on the couch, there's plenty of different tools now with this one airline, and it's a great effort from the team to deliver such security.
Yeah, it's exciting, and really the piece you do is, walk us through. What is your role, whether it's within New Zealand or any organisation that wants to tighten up that user login security. I know whether it's folks from some of the banks or from government entities or smaller organizations who just they want to be secure, but it's often quite hard work to put these mechanisms in place, isn't it?
Great. So we offer an API, which is something, a bit of code that any developer and engineer can write into any kind of process that you have. So, a good example is you have a form that allows people to send money to others. And let's just say it's instant. Once the money's gone, it's gone. Now, typically we've been, for good or bad reasons, you click a button and off it goes, and you wish for the best and that you've done it correctly. Bad actors use that and go, oh, if only I can get into your account by maybe social engineering you into giving your username and password or your phone number or the 6-digit code. If I get to that page, that's it. I can get away scot-free with that transaction. So what we've done is taken awesome technologies that are being proliferated like passkeys and going, you can apply that to any interaction online, from checking out at an e-commerce store, or like I mentioned, initiating a bank transaction. So think of a world where you're walking into or on your laptop and you're using Touch ID, Face ID for making your next e-commerce purchase. And one of the more exciting things is actually using it to do stuff in the physical world, using our phones to open cars, to open doors, to initiate things like maybe pharmacy prescriptions. So there's a lot of real world application that we can use our technology for. So I'm very excited. So we're at the ground floor of some exciting technologies here.
Mm-hmm. And what are you sort of seeing around passkeys, for instance? How are people adopting it? Because we do tend to be quite slow at adopting some technologies, other technologies, and Threads was an example of this. People adopt it in droves at the drop of a hat, right? So it does vary, but on the security front, we're not always that fast moving.
Yeah, look, I think it's changing. The fact that we're seeing headlines every week from that involve large sums of money. If Nigel Latta has to do a Monday night primetime episode on scams, I think we've hit probably the worst case scenario. I mean, we shouldn't be taking primetime to television airtime to talk about scams. I mean, this is the most boring, dry topic that's out there, but it's so topical. So passkeys, I think, will be driven through two fronts. I think big tech will play a big role, and we're very fortunate for Google, Apple to proliferate that. But consumers want a better option. And nowadays, there's lots of competition. You got Revolut, kind of neobank that's just launched in New Zealand.
Yep.
And if you don't keep up with the trends and give your customers a secure and excellent experience, they will vote with their feet and walk where they feel another vendor provides, or a provider provides that level of security and customer satisfaction. So I think it'll be driven by consumers and the fact that we all have iPhones and Android phones that can perform some of these cryptographic kind of technologies.
Yeah, it's great that we've had the big tech players got a line on that front, and it's going to be good for all of us from a security standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great to catch up again. And in terms of your sort of overall journey as a business, what's next for you?
But we want to go global in a big way. So we already operate in Europe, in America, and Canada, and Australia, New Zealand, but we see huge opportunities in Asia. So we're just growing the team at the moment to try and spread the good news of passkeys and authentication and verification. So it's a very exciting time for us. And to be supported by great customers, that also helps. So yeah, it's brilliant. It's been a great journey, and to have supporters like you along the way as well. So yeah, really appreciate everything.
Oh, it's always part of the goal is with the New Zealand Tech Podcast is shine a light on the good things that are going on, and the security piece I think is very, very important. As a nation that we step up on this front. And when I look at my own company, Gorilla Technology, those are the two things we focus on is around what we can do in terms of helping our New Zealand organizations, the uplift that technology can bring, and increasing that and reducing the downsides that technology can bring, reducing those risks. So yeah, you fit well into the appropriate categories there. So that's great. Well, thanks everyone for listening in and joining us on the New Zealand Tech Podcast this week. We will of course be back again next week. If you're not following us across all our social channels, that's the place to look for all my controversial statements. No, not so much of that. Maybe from time to time on the polarizing technology opinions, but you can find our live streams. If you're listening to the audio, then make sure you're following for live streams. Follow myself on LinkedIn, or you can also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook for the live streams. And if you are watching the live stream but not catching our weekly audio episodes, then look for us. Of course, on any podcast platform, be that Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc., or even in your car, we're on TuneIn there, and Spotify in the Tesla, for instance. Big thank you, of course, to our show partners, to Gorilla Technology, 1NZ, HP, Spark, and 2 Degrees. All right, thanks everyone. Catch you next week. See ya.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.